Hey everybody, in today's video, I'm going to be explaining what is one of the root causes behind anxiety and anger. So, without further ado. So, one of the biggest reasons that most people have anxiety and anger is due to the fact that they feel as though that they have an inability to be who they truly desire to be. They feel suppressed in some way. They have the inability to speak their truth, or at least they feel as though they have the inability, and that, being themselves and saying what they need to say isn't available to them because external feedback has shown that it's not okay to be ourselves or to say what we need to say in order to be ourselves. Where does that all stem from? Most of my clients always regress back to childhood. I say all of this not to blame our pasts, but to become aware of the patterns that have been created and the fact that we continue to stay in those patterns and perpetuate those patterns, even though we are no longer living in the past. So when we are small children, our parents do their best with what they know, but what has been the old paradigm, it's been parents commanding their children or instructing as opposed to making requests of their children. And that is the one reason I love consciously communicating with people. And this is something that I am still practicing. This is not something that I am perfect at, but I do my best to make myself aware of what exactly is coming out of my mouth when I am interacting with somebody. And it's not to say that there aren't going to be moments where we do need to give instruction to people, especially our children, when we're teaching something new. But what I like to do is even ask first if they're even wanting that instruction, because there are times when I am drawing with Eden, and I used to instruct in how to draw, and it's like, what? No. The creativity, just allowing the creativity and what they desire to do needs to be enough. And if they want to learn more, then asking, hey, would you like to learn how to draw eyes today? And even with things like chores, it's oftentimes why children don't want to help us with things anymore, because we are constantly instructing them in how to do it. Not what to do, but how to do it. So like folding the laundry or cleaning the dishes, we should be modeling those things, but not constantly correcting. The correction will come as they get older. So I always like to ask myself, am I making a request? Am I instructing as opposed to requesting? Because I do not desire her to grow up feeling as though I did not acknowledge who she is as a human being. Because when they are tiny babies, yes, we do everything for them. They are completely dependent on us, but independence can actually start happening much earlier than we assume. But because we raise our children, from that completely dependent stage of needing to be fed, needing to be clothed, to shifting them into more independence. Now, this is not something that obviously can be forced. If we try to force independence on our children, then it's the fight or flight or freeze response, because they feel as though we are separating ourselves from them. But what I really mean by that is, how can we create autonomy and independence for our children and for ourselves, by the way, because we do need to set up boundaries for ourselves. But in the example of our children, we automatically will go to the closet and pick out clothes for them and just dress them. So autonomy is asking them, what would you like to wear today? And if they're not sure, giving choices. Those types of questions can start from a very young age. You can ask your 2-year-old, which one would you like? They will pick. And sometimes, yes, it is like a back and forth indecisiveness and they're not so sure, but giving them the confidence to choose something that they like, right? As opposed to us projecting onto them what it is we feel they should be wearing. Like, I know a lot of, and I used to be one of them, I totally understand, like, a lot of parents like their children to match and things need to be color coordinated. I started shifting away from that and letting Eden make her own decisions in her clothes, and it blossomed to other things in her life. It gives her that feeling of independence and that she can trust herself. This really all does come back to the ability to trust ourselves. That fear of not being able to actually be ourselves and to say what we need to say comes down to not trusting in ourselves, because the pattern has always been somebody outside of us saying that we can't trust ourselves, even for, the littlest of things. Like, you can't trust yourself walking, on a ledge or climbing up a tree. And I'm not talking about like, the the bigger stuff, but just calculated risks that are good to take in order to gain trust and confidence within ourselves. How can we allow our children to take those calculated risks and learn about natural consequences of things if we are constantly telling them how to do things and what to do? This also comes back to ourselves. If we struggle to trust our children or other people, it's a lack of trust within ourselves, because we are not living in our truth and the integrity of who we desire to be. So how can we do that? How can we live in our truth, speak in our truth with integrity? A lot of us have to start at the beginning, and that is gaining the confidence in ourselves and learning how to trust ourselves again. That we have the power and the ability to make our own decisions and our own choices, regardless of what external voices may tell us. And that can take a lot of rewiring of the brain, of those neural synapses and the subconscious thought patterns that have been created over time. And my greatest tool for that, of course, is hypnotherapy, but, meditation and just cognitive behavioral therapy. When you have that voice in your brain that is telling you that you can't do this, you're not enough. Having that other side of your brain saying, yes, this may feel unfamiliar or scary, but I can do this, and it can shift to something exciting, right? So shifting those neural pathways to gain that confidence in yourself is a start. The next step, because it always starts within us, we cannot change anyone outside of ourselves. The only control that we have is ourselves and how we think and what we project out. So when it comes to our internal thoughts, the rewiring is what takes care of that. When it comes to what we externally project and what we deliver out into the world, a lot of that has to remain conscious as well if we desire to live in integrity, regardless of what the external stimuli shows us. So this is why I love conscious communication. If we can consciously communicate with others, regardless of how they communicate back to us, then we feel like we've done our part. We feel as though we've lived in our truth of the love that we desire to be, and we've done our best. Conscious communication is doing our best to lay down the triggers and the ego and the defensiveness of trying to explain our side of the story, and to empathize first with the other party. Once we have fully heard their story and what they need to get out without interrupting them, this can feel very hard. We can gauge whether or not they are empty of everything, and if they are then open to hearing our side of the story. If they are not, then there's nothing that we can do about that. We sort of have to just say, okay, and then give space and walk away. And this can be one of the most freeing and peace-bringing practices. A lot of times, though, it can feel very challenging if we do need to walk away, because then we ruminate about not being able to share our side of the story. But when we feel confident within ourselves and trust in ourselves, then there will never be a need for us to prove to anyone that our side of the story is valid, because we will know that we are valid, that we are valuable, regardless. If somebody is open to hearing your side of the story, then expressing a feeling and a need in a way that is not blaming is the goal of conscious communication. Well, the empathizing part first sounds like, it seems as though you are really angry. Is this because you have a need to feel heard? Then you can express, like I said, once they are empty, then you can express. If you're feeling like you're not being heard, you can say something like, I'm feeling very hurt right now because I have a need for mutuality when it comes to both of us being heard. Once that is expressed in that way, in a calm, patient demeanor, the guard gets let down pretty quickly. It doesn't happen all the time, but if you can gauge whether or not that person is emotionally available or open to hearing your side of the story, then it can bring productivity and moving forward and out of the consistent pattern of yourself not living in your truth. When we can start consistently speaking our truth and living in our integrity, then it opens up doors for other people to feel comfortable doing so as well. And that consistent cycle of suppressing our feelings and our needs won't continue to perpetuate the anxiety and the anger. So I hope you found this incredibly helpful. And if you have, please, as always, like, leave a comment, and subscribe. And I am sending you all my love. Bye.